I am sitting in for both school committee members.
So if you can sign
Yeah.
the one.
Just absolutely no. It doesn't say, in the real estate, the flyers and stuff, but it just doesn't say
Yeah.
size of the building. And we have to schedule for later on, so it's 645,000.
Should be good now.
Probably too late. They may have it.
You got it. That's easy enough, thank
It's
you.
usually the easy way to remember.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right here.
They go fast,
We have
I
it
will agree.
right here in this analysis. But I think it will do good to just have it.
Yeah.
6 grade, 6 to
Yeah,
8.
I'm a summer girl, but I can accept fall as
I
the
don't
winter
think
fall.
there'll be
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, they did a nice job, I did that last year, Town Beach, and so they have a really cool playground now, with great beach, and so, like, we were last week there, so it's nice to stretch it out, yeah.
Michael, we ready?
Yeah, that's right. I'll chop the start of it.
Okay, no,
So
that's good. Excellent, thank you.
Much yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so good evening, everyone. This is the September 18th meeting of the Building Subcommittee. I know we have an attendance sheet going around, so if you're a member, please make sure that you're signing it. If you're sitting in for someone, please make sure you sign for that person. I think we're just over the quorum, so that works perfect. The first item on our agenda is public comment. First speaker is Mr. Dick Kinnis.
I am Dick Kinnis, I live at 45 Yellowstone Drive. And first let me say, I have not made up my mind on this yet. I think everyone agrees there's a lot of work to do between now and the actual bond issue. But I'm just trying to gather some facts. So my background is I work for the federal government. A few years back, we moved from something like you're trying to do from like a 1936, I think the plaque says Work Progress Administration. So back in that era is where we were. We moved into what is now about a $50 million building. So the construction process I was involved with, and I wasn't part of it like you were, but I was able to get involved and see how it worked and ask questions and stuff like that. Is very similar to what's going on here. And part of what I do every day is I supervise different types of contracts. If I have a maintenance contract I'm an IT guy. If I have a maintenance contract on a computer or some kind of system, I have to read that contract, know what that vendor is responsible for, and justify that the tax dollars I'm spending on that contract are getting full value for that. And it's kind of weird saying a federal guy paying attention to tax dollars, but I actually do. Probably the only one in the federal government, but. So my concern was when I saw the $70,000 increase in the OPM fee, going from 30 to 99. I looked at some of the other bids. I don't believe it actually got discussed here. I tried to watch the last meeting you folks had, but I did watch the school committee meeting. I know you're the chairman of the school committee. I know you did bring it up on the cost and what it was. As someone who does that, I'm a little leery of, because now it's my tax dollars. How did that go about? So my two questions are really, who is the North Kingston representative that is the technical expert that's verifying that what is in that RFP that went out, the contract you signed with Jacobs, is getting done? I know it pivoted from Davisville to, from Quidnesset to Davisville. I know there's a question of whether you're going to be one school, two schools. I've tried to I didn't find out about this until about 3 weeks ago. I was looking to pay my water bill to see what it was, and I stumbled across it. So I've been trying to research this so I don't come here and make any mistakes, but if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me. So my big question is, who is that person from North Kingston that is checking that contract? And then part of that process has got to be to give them that extra money. We have to I would have to rewrite that contract, amend that contract with specific language saying, this is now what North Kingston has said we want Jacobs to do differently, and this is why the price is going up. And the only thing I could find online was that 2-page letter from Jacobs saying we want it for a time frame. And that RFP was not for a time frame, it was for a submittal, for a packet. So it shouldn't make a real big difference, the shift in submission date. So I just want to kind of see, you know, how that number came about, how we justified spending that much tax money on something that we initially bid out at $30,000. So I guess back to my 2 questions: who does that? Is that your job? Is it the school committee? And you know, where could I get a copy of whatever that contract reads now, what they're bound to do for that additional $70,000?
I'm not sure if, thank you, I'm not sure, I'll do the best I can to help. I'm not sure if this is the right committee or right forum, but let's see if we can get you an answer tonight, or if not, get back to you. I'm not sure if it might.
Yeah, so the initial RFP, the timeline of the project shifted. So initially the stage 2 submission would have been submitted on September 15th. And then the bond referendum would be at a date to be determined in November. This was back in February, March when the RFP was written. The bond would happen later in the late fall, early winter time frame. And then by December 30th, we would have to have a construction manager contract signed in order to qualify for the additional incentives. However, over the summer, the legislature changed the timing on it so that we no longer had that December 31st deadline, which allowed us to move from a September 15th submittal to a February 15th submittal, still keeping the referendum date and also shifting the construction manager deadline till the end of June. So the original agreement with Jacobs, the OPM, was from the start of the project through September 15th. There are actually 2 numbers that make up that $70,000 amount.
I understand it, but I read the RFP. The RFP is not a time-based RFP. It's not like saying we're going to have you come in for 10 hours a week until September, and now we say you got to come in 10 hours a week until February. It was a packet. Right? It's a 20-something page packet that they were supposed to put together so that we could submit it, and they were scheduled to do that September 15th, and then they were done. Correct?
So that was the original submission, and then with the change in the deadline, there are more hours that are needed in order to get this stage 2 submission. Now that it's being pushed out and changed. So
is it different?
There is a change.
Okay, and then that's what I'm saying. Is that documented so that we can see where that money is going? It's a lot of money, triple the contract price. So all I'm saying, I understand the changes happening.
Yeah, I mean, so hi, Erin. I feel like the documents are what you're looking for, and so I don't know if we have your email address, but we can get it.
Oh, sure,
and we can have somebody, you want to just write it on the back of that paper, and then we're happy to follow up. We also have been posting things online.
I tried to keep up with it.
Yeah, no, it's okay, but we can definitely follow up just
I found a document that said, you know, the 25 until the referendum, and then 45 after.
Yep, yeah, so either myself or Dr. Duvar or Mr. Waterman will follow up.
Thank you.
And I am going to run. I'm going to go see what they're saying down at the mega bond thing. Like I said, I am gathering information. I am not going there to join. So, but I do want to get the information from different people, because I know that's the most important part about this, is just getting the real facts.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you very much. Mary Warbeck?
Yeah, I'm Mary Warbeck, 25 North Road,
Come up to the microphone. Thank you, Mary.
Saunderstown. And this is just something that sort of bothered me after the last school committee meeting. I know we talked about, or you all, I mean, we always think about it as we, as the community, about the new school. And then there was a lot of information on what some of our other schools really need. And the fact that the bond has been written in a really general manner so that perhaps we can take care of some of these other things. And the only thing, and one thing that was mentioned a lot was so many of the schools needing either work on or new roofs. And I just want to make sure that as we think about that, and if the money is available, that when the roofs are addressed, they're addressed in terms of being solar ready and not just, repairs that will not allow us then to move forward another step into a more sustainable future. So that was, and I also worry, I don't want to see the money for our new buildings scavenged. I don't know if that's a good word to use or not, but that's also something that's sort of worrisome, that I want to see if this is, and this is where it's stated this will be net zero, that we take all the steps that are necessary right from the get-go to make the foundation for this school one that will take us not just through this century, but into the next.
So Mary, 2 points. Thank you very much. Just so later on in the agenda this evening, we'll be talking about the capital improvement plan, and we're putting together a capital improvement plan for stage 2 that would allow for that extra money to be spent on some of these projects. Also know, I'm just speaking for myself, it seems like I've learned a lot through this process, is that while I'm sure all of our intentions are to have the most energy efficient building possible, RIDE has limitations as to the cost per square footage, which is based on the number of pupils, which they're willing to reimburse on. So once you go over that threshold, you will not get reimbursement. Am I correct on that? Correct. So as a result, yes, I know our intention is to make sure that we make the most energy efficient building, but realize that once we're over the threshold that they're willing to reimburse, we no longer get the 55% max, 35% minimum reimbursement. So this is also an argument that I think we need to make with RIDE as well.
Yeah, and that's, all the more reason to make sure that we listen to the architects and what, the order in which things are, the priority levels.
Absolutely.
Than things that we can address at a later date. The other thing is, it worries me, I don't see the word.
Sorry, you have to, just for the
sorry.
tape, I'm sorry.
I don't see in the master plan the word energy used at all, and that concerns me in this time.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? Okay, thank you. Next item is to approve the previous meeting minutes of August 23rd, 2023. So moved. Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Item 4 is discussion and recommendations for the capital improvement plan. I'm going to turn that over to Mike Rowe.
I apologize for not having these out sooner. I think this is not for you. So we're going to put up the document that we're going to be reviewing right now on the TV for everyone to see. Thank you. So following the last meeting where we reviewed the different sites and the different priority levels, Dr. Duver, Mr. Mezzanotte, Mr. Parenti, myself, we met based off of feedback that had been received to put together what we think should be as part of the next capital improvement plan for the next 5 years for the school department. So the document that that's in front of you is in no particular order. It's a listing of the projects, and then at the back of the the printed out document, there's some copies over here. If anyone didn't get one, is the spreadsheet that we essentially looked at that lists these projects. So I'll just start from the top. I'll kind of go left to right. We grouped the roofs together, and the roof's value is approximate. Now, these projects have not gone out to bid. These are costs put together by the architects and their estimators. So the roofs at our buildings, you might scroll down just a tiny bit. And Rob, if you want to put them in the mouse, I'm certainly happy to. So the total cost for the roofs throughout the district that need to be replaced is approximately $25 million. And I did list the years of the existing roofs. So you can see the majority of them are from the early 2000s, with some being just a few years earlier. The next column to the right are media centers, and these would be the costs to update the media centers of all our schools into really 21st century learning areas. A priority we identified is adding walls into our open classroom schools. So that's Stony Lane, Quinnesset, and Fishing Cove. They all have, Fishing Cove has a section of the building, Quinnesset and Stony Lane are majority open classroom, so we'd like to move in that direction. We mentioned security as being a priority, so the cost of, the estimates of adding security vestibules to our schools that don't have those man traps, or sally ports, or I think there's a number of different names for them. The next two categories you can see are HVAC and AC upgrades. So you'll see some buildings on there that have air conditioning in their rooms. A lot of those are serviced by window units, and I know someone mentioned earlier energy efficiency. Anybody who has window units knows that they are not energy efficient. So this would be pulling those units out and or adding AC to areas that don't already have it. ADA upgrades, these were upgrades that were noted during the architect's walkthrough. Codes are always changing and evolving, and these are areas that we have to update in order to provide ADA access. Playground, the cost to add a playground to Davisville Academy. This was an estimate of a cost. The architects did not design a playground to cost it out, but this is just a cost of what it would cost to add a playground to Davisville Academy. Throughout the district, there were various windows, doors that either needed work or just straight replacement. And here are the costs for those buildings. We have some buildings that have generators, some buildings that do not have generators. Our buildings that do have generators are in need of replacement. So the cost for a generator for a building is listed at approximately $135,000 per building. I think on that list, is it just Hamilton? Is the only building that
has ones that's just old.
So Hamilton has an old one. This would be additions to these areas here. So Hamilton would be a replacement.
Davis was too, sorry, inside the building.
Davis a little right, but that's not part of this. Refurbishment to some athletic fields at the high school, baseball field, softball field, creating an area for a practice field for track and field so that the practice field can actually be renovated. One of the challenges they have is there are certain track and field activities that cause denting and damage, which then to the same practice field that our athletes are running on, so it creates trip hazards. So the idea here would be to separate the area so that track and field has an area and the athletic teams that need a flatter surface have an area and aren't in need of repair. This next category, I'll go through a little bit slower because these didn't kind of fit into a nice, neat category. So at Hamilton Elementary, you're looking at replacing the carpet in many parts of the building. High school, particularly down by the athletics area and by the gymnasiums, you'll see that there's a lot of cracking in the floor, and that's actually a result of the slab underneath that is cracking. So in order to repair that, you have to tear up the floor to repair the concrete and then put a new floor on. Refurbishment of the restrooms in the pre-K classrooms at Fishing Cove. Replacement of ceiling tiles, acoustical ceiling tiles at Stony Lane and Quinnesset. If walls are put up The ceiling tiles may not need to be acoustical at that point because you have walls, so there is a little bit of overlap here. This may not be needed if the walls go up. Quinessett sidewalk replacement. Forest Park, the front canopy has some corrosion that needs to be repaired. Davisville Academy, there is a wooden ladder on the roof to allow you access to the various HVAC. That's in a state that needs to be repaired. Hazardous material abatement, that's lead paint, and there was some asbestos work. As you can see, it's a small area, but it's still something we want to look at. So Hamilton and Forest Park are due for fire alarm replacements. Stony Lane, this is one of those projects that we kind of bundle together. They have a new fire alarm, but just their sprinkler heads need to be replaced. This is replacement of the auditorium railing. If anyone's ever walked on the balcony in the front row of the auditorium, it's a railing that's a little bit lower. New code means it should be up a little bit higher, so we want to address that. Various electrical upgrades. These are mostly in the electrical panels. Forest Park, Davisville Academy, Fishing Cove, and Hamilton. Again, masonry cracks. These are cracks in the concrete walls and or various parts of the sidewalk. So that was Fishing Cove, Hamilton, Quinessett, and Stony Lane. North Kingstown High School, upgrading the lighting in some of the areas of the parking lot. Again, at the high school, the office areas, and it's not just the main office, it's the guidance office, it's a number of the offices at the high school that have carpeting. That carpeting is 20 years old now, so it's due for replacement. Stony Lane, replacing the rubber gymnasium floor. At Stony Lane and Hamilton, looking at the gym partitions that are not functional at this point. At North Kingstown High School, refinishing the wooden stage. At all sites, adding water bottle filling stations. At Hamilton and Forest Park, I want to call it a cul-de-sac, but adding turnaround areas or cul-de-sac areas in the parking lots. I know if you've been in Hamilton and thought that there might be a parking space all the way down, only to get down there to realize that it's not a parking space and there's no easy way other than a multi-point turnaround, so this would address that at both Hamilton and Forest Park. Davisville Academy, tile floor replacement. That's not throughout the whole building. There was a wing that was recently, that was done. So this would be finishing that work up. North Kingstown High School, this is both repairing and reupholstering the auditorium seats. Hamilton, this is replacing a fence. In the high school kitchen, the kitchen walls are made of a special material that's really easy to clean off. And, so that would be replacing those walls. At Fishing Cove, Davisville Academy, Quinessett, and Stony Lane, ductwork cleaning. North Kingstown High School, replacement of hot water pumps. Davisville Academy, Quinessett, just various plumbing upgrades. And then North Kingstown High School would be upgrading the science lab hoods. Again, that was a code change and work that should be completed. So the total value of all of those projects is approximately $72 million. And so those would be the projects that we would be looking at putting forward in our capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is a plan that lasts for 5 years. And in addition to these projects, the proposed middle school, if approved, would end up on that list as well. So RIDE requires that when you do a stage 2 submission, you have the plan to complete at least 50% of the projects on the list, or the monetary value, correct, Data? The monetary value of 50%. So just completing the high school would notch us that 50% completion of the value, and then any projects on this list would qualify for reimbursement. You can also combine a security project with an educational enhancement project with an energy efficiency project, and also receive any applicable bonuses. So that's where you bundle the projects so that you can maximize the reimbursements for RIDE.
Like 2 questions, and I'll open it up to questions. Well, actually, one's a comment, but I'll make sure I'm correct. So if by some chance the question 1 did not pass, we would have to spend $36 million over the next 5 years to ensure reimbursement.
If this plan, correct, so this plan would be revised.
That was my second question.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's my second
The
question.
plan would have to be revised, because part of the plan is how are you gonna fund it? So,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, so that's not my second question. So I guess my first question is, I thought you were gonna go in a certain direction, but you probably were. So question number one is, if question one doesn't pass, we have to spend 50% of this over the next 5 years to ensure we get reimbursement.
we would have to spend 50% of whatever plan we put forward. So if question one didn't pass,
We would
I'm not
revise
sure,
this
we
plan.
would revise this.
Because that was my second question. This plan doesn't include Davisville or Whitford Middle.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And I think that's an important point that we'll have to, I'm sure we're gonna make that during the presentation, that if question one does not pass, the following number needs to be added to our stage two, because just because question one doesn't pass doesn't mean we can ignore Davisville, Middle, and Whitford.
There is a challenge though,
Correct.
correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I believe like with working with RIDE and the reimbursements, like we wanna make sure that we're investing money into, RIDE wants to make sure we're investing money into buildings that are going to be utilized for the next 50 years.
Right.
And so any work that we do in those buildings, if they don't last the threshold that RIDE wants them to, we actually have to pay back those
Right, I
reimbursements.
think the
So
number's
it's
20
something,
years, right? Is it 20? 20 or 30? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
It
something
is a
that,
time, I don't
like-
know if.
But the issue is there, right, there's a good discussion, but the issue
Yeah.
there is that if question one doesn't pass, we can't just ignore Whitford Middle and Davisville because we're not gonna get reimbursement.
yeah.
We still have to, still.
it's just gonna cost us more.
Exactly, exactly. So, all right,
The
those are my
other-
two questions.
Item is that if question one doesn't pass, you still have to put a funding plan, so you can't just put all the projects in and say, we're going to fund it through CIP. You have to back that up, how you're going to fund it through CIP. So there is a little bit of a challenge in terms of value that you can submit.
So if question one does not pass, and I'm not gonna hold you to it, I'm just gonna throw a number out there, but we can reasonably assume that we're gonna have to add well over $10 to $20 million to stage two. Again, I'm just throwing the number out there, so you don't have to confirm that. But just, which means that, we're gonna have to spend 50% of that over the next 5 years, and we have to come up with some funding sources. So either way, we're gonna be making some significant investments in the school department, and hopefully it's not spending good money after that. Okay. Any questions from the building committee on anything else, Mike?
No, that is it for.
Any
this
next
part.
steps you need from us before I move to questions? Like, is there something you need us to do as a committee?
There's no formal action needed, but I would encourage, review the list, and again, the supporting details, again, this was kind of high level, you can see plumbing upgrades is a kind of a broad category, but the specifics that those are pulled off of are on the back end of the document that we shared.
So then on behalf of the superintendent and myself, I would say that I would ask the building committee to, from now until the next meeting, spend some time on this, take a look, because if you have some questions, the next meeting would be a great opportunity to hit Mike with those questions, because obviously if question one does pass, this could be our final stage two. So there's a chance to make any recommendations, suggestions, and they gave us a whole packet last meeting, so please take the time to review that and give the school department, school district, any input that you may have, because again, if question one passes, this could be our stage two submission. So I think we'll wait till we get to item number 7, but we may have a little bit of time before our next meeting.
And if I could just add in, there are some projects that are planning to be done in-house with Bob Garanti's team. So just because it's not on this list doesn't necessarily, especially if you look at that priority level 5, there are a lot of projects within level 5 that his team is going to accomplish that we don't need to put on the plan because they're going to be done as part of just ongoing maintenance and operations. So I don't want to get too nervous if it says, trim a tree, that we're ignoring a tree that needs to be trimmed. We're still going to do that, but that's not something, if you look at these items, these are a lot of projects we need to bring experts in, we need design drawings for it. These are projects that are larger in scope.
Yeah, I just had a question, Mike. This is great. Thank you for everybody that worked on it. One of the things that I've noticed in some of the different elementary schools is that we don't have like complete equity when it comes to like the gyms and the cafeterias and the kitchen equipment, etc. Was that considered when we were looking at that and within like what we need for the different schools?
So I know we did consider that, and if I can speak to one end, kitchen equipment, all of our schools just received new kitchen equipment in the weeks leading up to school, so now that all schools will be in the upcoming weeks cooking at the schools, so that part has been addressed, thankfully. But we did look at those, we did look at those areas, and while they're not on this list, we're certainly open to.
Yeah, it would be
feedback.
interesting just to see, you know, like, because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's Forest Park and
Fishing Cove, you talk about the gym and cafeteria.
yeah, I just know it's such a challenge for the teachers and the administrators with scheduling and different things, and that it might be something that we might want to look into. Kind of, I know it's probably big, but
Yeah.
something that might be worth at least putting a scope under, just so that the district has an understanding of what that would be if we ever did them. Thanks.
Any other questions of the committee members?
Just,
I'm sorry, Mary, just said we had public comment, I apologize.
Oh,
But if there's
sorry.
any, it's okay, but if there's anything afterwards, please, after the meeting, just pop right up to us.
Okay.
We'll be here, so thank you, I appreciate that. Any other committee members? Okay, next item is Perkins Eastman presentation of proposed consolidated 6 through 8 middle school.
So we can grab one of these sugar packets. Go full screen.
Am I your van, or would you like controls?
I've got it.
Yeah, one of these. Hands off then.
Good evening, everybody. For the record, I'm Joe Costa, a principal and architect with Perkins Eastman. Tonight, we have a full agenda of the status of the project. It's been several weeks that we've been working on the revised program. That program has changed slightly. We're going to explain what has changed and what that resulted in the program and the amount of square footage that's going to be proposed for the new school. Tonight's agenda, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about mission and vision of North Kingstown School Department. Then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about Whitford and Davisville Middle Schools and some of the deficiencies that we found by doing tours of those schools. We talk about the program update. As I mentioned, the building's a little bit smaller, a little bit fewer children, which I think is going to actually work better on your site. And then we're going to give you a little site update, reminding everybody of the opportunities and challenges of the site that's selected for this new middle school. And then we'll talk a little bit about design. So we're going to talk a little bit about site and building design, and really that's the most exciting part of the evening. And our design team has been really busy putting together the building on the site and looking at sun angles and spatial relationships and all kinds of stuff that they're going to give you a little brief show on that in a couple of minutes. And then we'll talk a little bit about reimbursement, what we expect to get back from State of Rhode Island, and then we'll give you some time for some questions and answers. So before that, we start with introduction. We do have a core team of people with us tonight. In addition to myself, Tina's going to be here in a few minutes. She's running a little late, but in the back seat, I have Mike Berger, one of our design principals. Chris Bradner is with Traverse, landscape architect. Steve D'Ambrosia is also with Traverse, landscape architect. And way in the corner is David Potter from PAR. Each one will speak a little bit about each of their disciplines, and then we'll take some questions. So, project overview. As everybody knows, it's a $167 million bonding resolution. That's not the exact number, but it's close. I think it's like 167.4. The project is for a consolidated new middle school. What has actually changed is the 5th grade are no longer in this building. It was decided after lots and lots of discussion that it would be better to keep the 5th graders in their current facilities. And you saw Mike's list of improvements that are proposed for those schools, which will help those kids. And also the enrollment has changed. Remember, it was 1,200, now it's dropped down to 900 students. Again, a little bit more manageable, a little bit smaller facility. There are some district-wide building improvements and upgrades, including things like security, roofs, HVAC, all the sort of stuff that Mike Waterman just presented in his list. Way too numerous to list here, but those are some of the things that are going to be considered as part of the overall appropriation. Okay, so talk a little bit about Whitford and Davisville. As you know, those are your two existing schools. Wickford, currently built in 1932, is about 91 years old, historic building. And Davisville, built in 1967, is about 56 years old. So they are certainly schools that you've got your money's worth when they were originally constructed, but they do have some problems that make it very difficult for those projects to continue to provide the service, not just now, but the next 20, 30, 40, or 50 years. Some of them include undersized classrooms. Classrooms in today's schools are much larger because they provide a much broader spectrum of educational opportunities and functions and methods in those rooms. They have somewhat inflexible furnishing and not really supporting the kinds of uses. There's also an inadequate number of smaller spaces for individual instruction, one-on-one, small groups. That's not there. There's also no dedicated auditorium or performance platform. There is a little platform in the school, I think off of the cafetorium, but there's no dedicated auditorium or platform space. In the new school, we are providing that. There's certainly accessibility challenges. And when those buildings were built, accessibility codes were not even in existence, and so those schools have been retrofitted as best as possible, given the sort of limitations of the structure. Also, it's limited to technology. I know you've been trying to keep up with it, but certainly the infrastructure that's really behind the walls is somewhat outdated. But very important, of course, is very aged heating and ventilating systems, and with that, there's a lot of energy inefficiency associated with the way the building was originally constructed. They really did not install much of insulation. They didn't really think about thermal conductivity and everything else that we think about today, and consequently, those buildings do leak, and there's a lot of energy required to heat them and keep them comfortable. There's also a lack of parity between the two sites. Wickford being a much smaller site with very limited site improvements, very old building, versus Davisville is a little bit more modern, a lot more ball fields. So there's a certain amount of lack of parity or equality amongst those two schools. There is certainly a limited science and STEAM labs and support. A big component of your new middle school will be the STEAM curriculum and hands-on learning and robotics and a number of support spaces associated with those functions. I talked about the envelope. Limited air conditioning. Of course, almost every school we build today is fully air conditioned, and that's for a number of reasons besides air quality and comfort, but also for allowing the attention and the comfort associated with good learning. Everyone remembers how difficult it is to learn. Beginning of September and kind of right before school ends, and by having air conditioning, we actually make our school year a little bit longer. 21st century learning facilities, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, and that is a broad spectrum of things, including comfort, acoustics, energy, views, indoor-outdoor connections, and things like that. Let's see what else we got here. Acoustical design, extremely important today. As we know, learning is a function of how well the student can hear what the teacher is saying. And so noise from HVAC or outside or from adjacent classes make it very difficult for students to learn. And also there's a certain amount of worn and damaged finishes throughout the building. As I said, the district has maintained the buildings beautifully, but there's only so many times you can fix things, and eventually they do have to be replaced. And then lastly, there's a lack of administration and teacher workspaces. There's a tremendous need for student services and the spaces associated with those student services, and they just don't exist in the current building. So that's really just a high level of defining the need of those two facilities. Bob, you want to talk about mission and vision?
Sure, yeah, so I want to call attention here to the next slide, which really Dr. Duva got into a very profound quote about kind of what we're working towards. So, you know, when we're looking at this facility, we tend to focus on, you know, on the building itself, but really our goal and our vision here is that the facility is going to deliver on what we see as being our vision for our students moving forward, which is really to empower them. It's to not only support them in a traditional academic environment, but to empower them to go beyond that, and to really push their learning and really become equipped to the best of their abilities to compete in a very different, ever-changing economy when they leave school. And so Dr. Duva said it very well here. He talked about the vision of these facilities that support educators and students to thrive in the 21st century learning environments that provide opportunities for students to not only learn from the instruction provided by their teachers, but also from the design and systems that we create within the school building. Our students should be change agents, constantly learning and challenging themselves about how they can make their community a better place. There's no better way than to design a building that promotes sustainability, net zero energy use, and an environment that promotes positive health and wellness. These systems will go beyond academic programming. They are a beacon to create greater awareness and understanding of stewardship to improve our global environment. So, as you can see, Dr. Duva has a very profound mission here, a very powerful vision for where we're going. And I think that as educators, we're very much together in seeing this future for our students, and that's really what this building serves as more than just a structure, a facility. It's a gateway in many ways to a higher level of learning.
Bobby, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So moving ahead. So the new middle school, we're talking, you know, a couple of notes here: the net zero energy sustainability, a high performance building. Again, with the challenges that we face as a society, having a facility that can offer these lessons can be enormously beneficial. Opportunities and benefits from consolidation. Right now, there are setbacks that we have simply from the fact that we have students going to school in two separate buildings. The buildings are very different, as Joe articulated. They offer differences in terms of access and opportunity. Facilitating a teaming structure. We are able to do teaming structure at only one of our middle schools right now. It's a beneficial structure that is student-centered and geared towards really supporting students that very, very critical time, which is the middle grades. This facility would support that with the groups being together. It would also support more project-based learning, individualized instruction, non-traditional approaches to learning, things that get kids excited, hands-on, things that we know are really beneficial to students in terms of engagement. Also looking at learning environments to support wellness for students, teachers, and administrators. It gets overlooked a lot of times, but just the lighting of a building, the access to natural light in a building makes a critical difference in terms of the environment in that building and the experience that both staff and students have. This would offer that's going to make the space brighter, more welcoming, more positive. There's a big advantage to that in terms of overall feel and vibe within a building. As we mentioned before, building as a learning tool, okay? If we're teaching kids about the green economy, if we're teaching kids about environmentalism, sustainability, all these things, this building will serve as a tool for that, which will be just very hands-on and very relatable for students. Inclusive education, universal design. Again, you're looking at buildings that were built now that were built in a different era. Education was very, very different then. The way we saw different learners was very different than how we do now, and the idea of inclusion and belonging and the importance of building schools that have that kind of environment for all kids is critical. And right now there's things that we do, certainly the best we can, but the fact is our buildings that we use now were not built at a time when that was a priority. And then adaptable and flexible learning environments and furnishings. Again, this is also critical, making spaces that are flexible, that can meet different needs for different times and places. You know, you look at some of the modern library media centers out there, they can really do this. They can create spaces that can accommodate large groups. They can easily flex to spaces where it's small groups that can meet in small table groups, individualized spaces, spaces that are warm and welcoming and positive. Those are important too. And then finally, school security measures. Goes without saying the importance of school security that we all know about today. And again, the fact of the matter is that the buildings our middle school buildings we currently use were built at a time when that was not the priority it is today, for sure. And obviously a new facility would certainly address that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Sorry, I'm delayed here, but, so thank you. Actually, everything that Rob just spoke about is kind of summarized here. We look at this, and Dr. Duva's vision is so inspirational. This slide here sort of takes those spheres and says, look at all these things together. What that yields is sustainability and student success. But it goes beyond just the student success. It's also the educators and administrators in the building. A high-performance building with 21st century learning design features all plays into the wellness of everyone that's in the building. So these points that are on this slide were just basically discussed, and I'll let you review that also if everyone has the handout. But we're very excited about the design because this is the kind of thing that is gained from it.
Thank you, Tina. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a few minutes about numbers and students and square footage. So the vast majority of this new building, of course, is devoted to general classrooms. Now, that's where students spend the vast majority of their day. That's really where they get the most instruction. That is really the part of the school that is the most structured of all of the other components in the building. And you're going to see in a few minutes, there's a lot of stuff in this building that sort of supports what's happening in the general classrooms. But as I mentioned earlier, the 5th grade is now dropped off, and we have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. There's about 10,850 square foot of space devoted for classroom usage. There are certainly a world language, ELL, intervention, health rooms, academic classrooms, as well as faculty print and workroom, for a total of about 39,500 net square feet associated with general use classrooms. Now, what does that look like? These diagrams really begin to illustrate how the school, the academic programs are going to be actually organized. And in typical 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the neighborhood consists of 3 teams each. Remember, it's 900 students divided by 3 grades. That's 300 a grade. Each grade is subdivided into 3 100 student groups made up of 4 classrooms, 3 general use classrooms plus 1 science room. And that is the typical classic 4-room organization for a middle school. As I mentioned, most of the day of the student is spent within those 4 rooms, going out of their neighborhoods when they're having lunch, or gym, or art, or music, or doing robotics, or some of the other functions in the school. But what happens is that neighborhood becomes a familiar place for the student, familiar student to the teacher. Instruction happens there, and in some cases, special ed can also occur within the neighborhood. And in a few minutes, you're going to see how we actually design and organize each neighborhood, as well as each grade, and how they stack and how they fit on the site to maximize efficiency and maximize their ability to feel part of a much smaller school in a larger facility. There is a whole family of support that goes along with each neighborhood and each grade. You'll see sort of the diagrams on the side there, and those are actually incorporated in each of those neighborhoods so that access to those spaces becomes very efficient, and students are not traveling a great distance to get the special help they need on a particular topic. It's all right there with a custom design designed for the next century of learning. This overall represents the total program of the building. I haven't counted exactly, but I think there's over 120 rooms in this facility. You see that the classrooms and the grade configurations are organized, but in addition to that, there are also special ed classrooms. There is a suite of administrative and support spaces that are made up of the main office, including meeting spaces for private discussions and more open discussions. There's a security component that's also involved in that main office. There's a guidance suite, again with security as well as privacy issues that are fully addressed, as well as a health and nurses suite. And we know that in today's school, students' health and maintenance medicines and everything else is extremely important, that is also part of the program. In addition to that, we do have an auditorium and stage. The auditorium is designed to hold about 450 fixed seats, so it is not a cafetorium, it's not a gymatorium, it's an actual auditorium, and it's really, the idea there is that it's preparing students for their high school experience, and you have a very nice auditorium in that facility, and this is sort of getting them ready to make best use of their time in high school. We do have a fairly large gym. It's about 8,000 square feet. I think your high school gym is around 11,000, something around that, Bob?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so it's a little bit smaller, but it's still size for a competition gym in the middle. It does have a roll-up curtain that splits the room into two halves for PE function as well as for practice games in the other direction. It also has pull-out bleachers that provide plenty of seating space. The gymnasium is really designed for full school assemblage if required, so a combination of the bleachers, either standing or seating on the floor, could accommodate really every student, teacher in the building for those kinds of functions. A very exciting part of this program is the technical education program, and that's really made up of 3 spaces. One, a tech ed program, which allows for a wide variety of hands-on. There's a robotics lab where students put together, design their own robots. And there's actually a coding space where students develop coding software for the experiments that they're actually building. So they're building with hardware, they're building with software. And what's nice about that suite is that it has storage areas, it has places for materials, and it has places where students can actually put their projects safely and really develop a semester-long project with a presentation at the end. Cafeteria is also sized really on a per grade basis, so every grade has a lunch wave, so that's accommodating at least 300 students. And kitchen is a full service kitchen, and it's sized for full service. Of course, art, we have dedicated art rooms with storage. We also have music rooms, also with storage, and those all sort of work with their adjacent spaces. The media center is also in this particular project, and oftentimes the media center and the tech ed are sometimes coupled as a STEAM or as a STEM facility, and we're we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. And of course, at the very end, we have the wide variety of building services, including an adequate receiving area, adequate storage, proper sized mechanical spaces, as well as spaces for technology and communication throughout the building. So it really is quite a comprehensive list of spaces. Graphically, the pie chart that you see there really show how the spaces interrelate in terms of percentages, and you can see that the general academic is 40% of the total pie. And everything else is really a supportive cast member to the main general academic spaces. And by the way, originally the building was about 180,000 square feet. It's now been reduced to about 144,000 square feet. So it's much smaller, 36 or so thousand square feet. Much more efficient, much better on the site. Okay.
So we'll move to the site, and Yeah,
Well, I
Dave,
think David would want to do stuff.
Dave, if you could just give an overview, I think actually we've seen this before, but we just touch on it and then move into the landscape architecture versus design.
Of course.
Steve, if you wouldn't mind, just because of the way the mics are in the room, just kind of,
Oh, do you
or
want
go over
to?
there, your choice.
Oh, go
Any way that there's,
Okay, thanks.
Just
Thank
none
you.
of the touch screen, so.
Oh, yeah, no touch.
So it's just this first slide, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm David Potter from Park Corporation. I'm a civil engineer. I was before you at the end of July, and this slide came up. One of the first things that we had did was, when this site was looked at, was look at what we have for natural resources and what constraints we might be up against when we're looking at placing this building on the site. So this slide here, just to situate everyone, north is up on the screen. We have School Street at the northwest corner of the graphic. There's two parcels. There's the Davis Middle School, which is labeled right here, and then there's the McGinn Park with a number of athletic facilities and other recreational amenities throughout it. One of the first things that we did on the site was flag the wetlands. There are wetlands to the south, at the southern end of the site, and also on the eastern end of the site. There's a tributary to the Sawhill Brook that is, you can see the label up there, it's out into the woods to the east. And then there's the actual Sawhill Brook, which is, you can see it there in the southeast of our site. So our wetland scientists flagged these wetlands. They picked up the locations with the GPS device and we put them onto the site plan. We then looked at what type of wetlands we have and what the jurisdictional areas and what buffer zones would be applied by the DEM. And we placed those on this graphic as well. And that's outlined in the orange and the white lines that you see bordering the wetlands. They vary in width based on the type of wetland, and we're not going to get into all that here, but it gives us an idea of what our area that we should be working in is on this site. The other site constraint we found was the floodplain. So there's the blue line that runs right through the existing athletic facilities. The floodplain associated with the tributary and with the Sawhill Brook is to the east of that. It's at elevation 35.7, and it's a mark of where FEMA believes that the 100-year flood, if we have a 100-year storm, how high the waters may rise and where it would fall on the site. These constraints are very common in Rhode Island. We work with these all the time. And knowing this information early is important because as we're working with the landscape architect, the committee, the architects, to place the building on the site and figure out where to place the new athletic facilities, roads, parking areas, we take all this stuff into account. So with that, I will turn it over to Traverse, to Steve, who's going to talk about the progress on the current site.
Okay. So this is kind of an overview of where our design is at for the site. As David mentioned, School Street up to the northwest here. This red dashed line, that's where the existing Davisville Middle School is currently. And then we're showing where the new middle school would fit on the site. And then you can see McGinn Park kind of wrapping along the north and east side of the school.
You want to run that slide? Okay, like the labels?
Yeah, thanks. All right, so as I mentioned, we have the new middle school here. We have access coming from School Street, so along the middle of the site, we have parent drop-off with the drop-off loop. We have 130 plus or minus parking spaces with ADA, and then there's also the existing McGinn parking, which has about 65 spaces as well for overflow parking for events. Bus loop would come in through McGinn Park driveway, go through the little roundabout, and then loop around at the front of the school. So all of our drop-off is happening right at the main entrance. We have a large entry plaza, which will get further designed. And then as we wrap around, we see the existing park, the existing Little League field, the multi-use field, and the associated extra space to the south and east. And we have access for emergency service at the back, and then access to the existing cell tower. Around the school, the cafeteria is in the back, so we're showing outdoor dining both at the exterior back of the school and also an opportunity within the courtyard. The courtyard itself could also have some learning and gathering spaces. Wrapping around this back side of the school, you have a nice backdrop of the woods, wetlands, so it's not going to get disturbed. We have emergency access pathway through the back, opportunities for outdoor learning that can be kind of nestled into the trees a little bit to kind of enhance that natural benefit that they have out there. And then we're looking at our relocated softball and baseball field. Currently, they would be, you can kind of see the remnants of the softball field here, and the baseball field itself is right underneath the middle school. So these would be relocated. Orientation for the baseball field right now is where it wants to be, to the northeast. These are all going to have updated amenities, new bleachers, dugouts, whole 9 yards. So you have a whole new athletic complex, essentially for these two pieces. And then other than that, general site improvements, circulation for pedestrian access around the site. So we can have walking loops, stormwater management, which are some of these darker green areas to help with some of the runoff and helping to prevent any water issues.
That's great. Thank you.
Hello everyone, stand over here, apologize if my back is to you. Now to the school. I'm sure you haven't flipped ahead and taken a peek yet, but we'll walk you through where we currently are. We included this diagram so you have an understanding of why the building is organized the way it is before we jump into the building. But this illustrates all the information that David just went through in the site circulation that Steve mentioned. I mean, we are kind of, we're back in by the wetlands constraints, buffers to the south. By the way, we rotated just a little bit, maybe 45 degrees to the right, so the building is orthogonal. That's the way you'll be starting to see the building plan. So you notice the north arrow in the bottom left-hand corner for orientation. But you do have some wetlands, setback buffers. We're building right up to where we can there. You have the existing fields to remain. With existing light poles, bleacher area, we're going to want vehicle access width on this side, so kind of pushing the building this way. We have the existing school, which will have to remain operational during construction. So it sits up here with the septic system that services that building. So kind of, that's our northern extent. And then further down here, we have the existing cell tower, trying to keep a comfortable distance away from there. What this leads to is actually a really efficient, compact building. So I think that's a plus. We're not making there are no compromises to the building lays out as we'll walk through it, and it forces us to design a compact, really efficient building, which helps the bottom line and helps minimize travel distances throughout the school for these students. And David mentioned the 100-year floodplain. We kind of want to illustrate what we're proposing. The existing school, the Davisville Middle School, right now is around, say, 41, 42 feet elevation above sea level, and it's out of the floodplain. This existing flood line is, let's say, 36, we're at about elevation 36 right here. What we're proposing is raising the elevation here, so it would take the floodplain line and basically redraw it. So we would be building outside of the floodplain, flood zone. Raising elevation to around 41 feet elevation. So it'd be very similar to when you go up to the site now where the existing school is. That's basically the elevation that the new building would be at. And then this line will be redrawn. And then we'll have to find other places on site to lower the elevation to make up for that compensatory storage area. So hopefully this clarifies. We're not building in a flood zone. We're going to redraw that flood line, and the building will be outside the flood zone. Love this diagram because as you're looking through the plan, this really illustrates the two components, the public and assembly side, and then really the private, kind of quiet academic side. Since we lost, the fifth grade is no longer included in the building, we're now creating a 3-story academic wing, which is great. I think that was the charge all along, try to create a 3-story max building, so this really works well. And then the rest of the building, the blue, majority of it is a single story, and a small portion of it is a 2-story. So you got the public assembly kind of on the noisier side of the site, closer to the parking, closer to the fields. Then on the quiet side, near the woods, which will always be woods, it's always wetlands, nothing will ever be developed back here. We're tucking the academic spaces back here and they're taking advantage of the site. So zooming in, we have some images on the right-hand side. These are all projects that we worked on to help kind of paint the picture. We're starting to design the building, starting to mass it up and create some 3D images. And also, this is early on in the planning, so the plan is going to tweak and get massaged and developed as we move forward in the coming months. As you enter in the front door, as Steve mentioned, you come off whether you're by parent or by bus, you're walking, you all come in through a single controlled entrance through that secure vestibule. And right at that vestibule, you have the administration office, so directly to the side, so a very secure entry sequence. And then as you walk into the space, what we're calling Main Street, is this spine which leads from the front door all the way down to the woods. So as you walk into the space, it's going to be tall volume space, natural light coming in, controlled natural light coming in from above, views of the woods down through the end of the corridor. And as you walk into the space, farthest point away from the academics and quiet part of the site, you have your dedicated music spaces. Nothing above it, so you can get the appropriate acoustical height, really great performing spaces. You got the auditorium that Joe was talking about, a 450-seat dedicated auditorium space with a stage. Again, all located at the front. Directly adjacent to that, you have your gymnasium. I think it's around 8,000 square feet right now, all the support spaces. Then your cafeteria with services around the back of the school, away from parking, and again, with great, fantastic views and access to those woods and outdoor learning off the back of the cafeteria. This image here, that's a school in DC that we worked on. We're calling this really the heart of the school. It's really the stair, the commons. It's this hinge point that we're looking forward to design, which becomes a gathering spot for events for kids before and after school. It services the large box spaces, the auditorium, the gymnasium. So it becomes a gathering spot. But also, it brings you up vertically through the school when we get to the second floor. This nice open visual connection that takes you up to really the tech spaces. Also along Main Street, again, we're celebrating art. So there's this theme of celebrating these STEAM academic spaces, kind of hinged around this academic heart, the stair and commons, and it continues up on the second floor. We have your more intensive, specialized special ed spaces off this secondary corridor, adjacent to administration, guidance, and nurse, closer to the front door. Mechanical spaces located close, shortest run from the street, right there in this corner, which makes a lot of sense. And then you have, kind of completing the courtyard here, is your academic spaces. So it's a 3-story building. These are almost identical from floor to floor to floor. And so the first level could be 6th grade, second level 7th, 3rd grade 8th, and they all stack. Again, super efficient architecture. And each grade is made up of 3 teams, as Joe mentioned. So you have team A, it's 3 typical classrooms and a science classroom. B, same. C, same. Shared prep room in the center, adjacent to those 3 science classrooms. Then you have resource rooms, intervention, ELL, faculty toilet, all that support space kind of right at that center hinge point, which opens up to your grade-specific commons, again, with great views kind of nestled into the woods, taking advantage of the fantastic site. And then, like I mentioned, all kind of wrapped around this courtyard, which Steve and his team are starting to design, some really controlled outdoor learning. And no one's wandering into the site, into the courtyard, and no one's wandering out. So it's a great place for some outdoor learning, hands-on learning.
So each grade is on a different floor?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly, so this grade is all 6th grade. And there were some concerns with some of the earlier diagrams with fingers, right? That kind of stuck out one way in, one way out. So each grade has 300 students. And the way that this works is there's always 2 ways in, 2 ways out. So the flow of students, ideally can be half and half. So you don't really have pinch points on this. And it's great for security, supervision. These red dots indicate areas that the building can be secured with doors during the day. You have large doors on hold opens during an alarm or during an event in the evenings. Those can be secured and locked down. So the public really kind of walks into really kind of almost a community center where they can't wander into the academic spaces or down these side corridors, but they have access to the auditorium, the gymnasium, the caf, and then there's a media center up on the 2nd floor.
I was going to wait and ask questions, but being that
Oh,
Jack
shoot.
jumped in, no, just a quick question. So, what is the educational thought process to having 8th grade on the 3rd floor?
King's Castle. Right here, the
I actually,
house,
but I was thinking just the opposite. It seems like it's almost as you go on, it seems like it's almost a punishment. No, it's almost like they don't have. I guess keep on going, but it seems like they don't have the access that 6 to 7.
Yeah, Ralph, if I
figured
could,
that'd be
our
educational.
thinking here was that, your sixth graders are your youngest students, they're your newest students to the building. We kind of wanted to minimize the amount of foot traffic that they would have to be following, so like giving them for like the same floor access to like the nurse's office, the guidance office, things like that, the areas of the building that's gonna reduce the amount of
Opportunities to get lost.
there you go, thank you. Like just kind of climbing stairs, I mean, that was our thinking around it, that our newest students to the building should have kind of the closest access to different spaces they need to access.
They're all the same though, right? So if the educators get in there and they decide that that's not
100%.
working, they can
Absolutely.
switch it,
Yes.
change it,
Yeah.
depending on what makes sense.
Absolutely, all the spaces, all the classrooms are the same size, everything's.
The classrooms are the same, the resources are different per floor.
No, same.
No, they're all the same.
I have to disagree. So the second floor has a media center, the third floor does not.
Oh, we're talking within
Oh, I just
this
put
academic wing.
Right, but I'm saying, again, my point was that, and that's why I knew they had a very educational answer to it. My point is that, again, the first floor has the auditorium, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, the guidance administration. Then you go to the second floor and you still get the media center and you get tech. Then you go to the third floor and all you have is classrooms. That's it. And so no, they don't have all the same. And so that's what I was just wondering. I knew that would be.
We're talking
That's okay,
within
no,
academic.
right, but I knew that had to be an educational answer. I was just wondering
Adjacencies.
why, but whatever, that's education. I was just curious to know.
Yeah, so step one that you nailed it, Rob, is sixth grade, transitional grade. I mean, before we're looking at fifth grade, right? Trying to minimize their travel distances. You look at the spaces that they're gonna be utilizing, that they'll be traveling to every single day. Cafeteria is number one. So they have the shortest travel distance. They're not going in the stairs. They're not mixing in the stairwells with the older students, unless they're going to a tech space, or a language room, or the media center. So that's the way we're suggesting it. Of course, then the point is each of these classrooms, you can change the label on any of these and flip those around. I think the program does not change. The architecture will not change.
Just curious to know the thought process. I knew that had to be an educational component, that's why.
That's a great question.
Thanks.
Sure. So moving up to unless there's more questions, moving up to the second floor, there's that kind of hinge point, really the heart of the school that's around this commons, this vertical stair commons, takes you right up to the media center, which has great presence as you enter the school. We're already starting to look at the architecture and what that looks like. It can be a beacon in the evening, a very nice glass lit space, and directly kind of tied to that and adjacent to that is the tech suite that Joe was talking a bit about, where there are physical connections between technology and the media center, but also amongst themselves. We're also looking at some opportunities for some rooftop learning, maybe some PV on display, some green roofs, being really hands-on, showing what this building is. We talked about sustainability and this building as a teaching tool. We're really excited about all the opportunities, budget permitting, to exploit those within this building. More language, so really the shared special spaces that are not large assembly spaces are located here. Again, they tie into this 3-story academic wing. And media center, really flexible space, multi-use space, and then technology, STEAM is something that's really special about the school. And then as we already saw, very efficient. This pops up to the third level. Should mention, the views, the daylighting. We're going to look very carefully at controlled daylighting into the space. We need to talk about sustainability. One of the big reasons, one of the big things we're trying to do on the site is to maximize the orientation of the building. Academic spaces primarily, you want a really nice southern exposure or northern exposure. You want to really try to avoid direct east and west to control heat gain and glare disruption. It's the way the building performs down the line. So sustainability, we can add PVs, we can do a whole bunch of stuff within the building, but it starts at the building orientation and how you orient big blocks. Once you're set, then you can continue to layer in and you're better for it. So this orientation, 2/3 of academic classrooms have optimal orientation, which is great for the site. And daylighting and views at the ends of every corridor, most corridors, I should mention, we have views. So with this whole building, wherever you go, there are view corridors. There's natural light, spilling into the space. So, any other questions?
Question while you're on those, elevator access for accessibility?
Yep. So right now, the EL is what we're
Oh, perfect, thank
showing
you.
over here. Just the number of students we want to.
Yes.
So thinking, on either end, which makes a lot of sense, right? So if you're coming from this side, you have a nice corner stair, and then you have an elevator associated with it. And then the third stair, we need that by code, just because of the number of students.
Thank you.
Good question.
the actual field, this is the middle school, you haven't put a track on that yet, have you? It should have a track. And it should have a field that's astroturf and usable for soccer and any kind of other, other school activity, where you're not gonna kill the turf. But at a middle school, Whitford Middle School and Davisville, they were both state championships in track. You gotta have, with 900 kids, you need to have an athletic, something like that, athletic, to have these kids be able to, go out there and run, throw a hammer, maybe not throw a hammer in the school area, you might wanna find another place, we've had problems with that before, but you might wanna find another place to throw javelins and hammers.
Is that common for a middle school to have a track?
Just should be, for anybody,
Yeah.
have a track, any school should have a track, I think. That's one of the most important things around, and even for the local public. So, to have, you can't do that at the high school because you have to lock up the athletic field. But at an outside field like this, like every field in Cranston has a track that's accessible to senior citizens. And you gotta think of the senior citizens who wanna go and walk a track. And it's not that much to build a track.
So, I mean, we talk about, I'm not sure who wants to take this one. There's the site limitations, and trying to preserve and budget. I know we didn't.
I know in the 90s when I went there at the Davisville site, there was I remember like being tortured running around kind of a perimeter path, and so I don't know if that still exists and if there's any opportunities there.
It was there, I think.
It wouldn't be a track, but it was more like a cross-country loop, if you will, kind of along where the football fields are. So maybe it's just something we could look at.
Yeah, so for right now, we're looking at pedestrian walking paths around, so that way, excuse me, you can have loops of differing lengths. The problem that we run into on the site is really the size of a track. To have an actual legal sized track for a meet.
It wouldn't have to be legal, we just have to be usable.
Right. So the best that we're probably going to be able to do is outside the floodplain, around the ball fields, is create a measured track of some sort.
We've done this on other middle school level projects where it's a walking path, like with lane markings around a field or around a set of fields where you can actually mark the lengths, but you're just using the available space around fields. It's not necessarily, a track.
Or around the multi-purpose field. Right. Or around the multi-purpose.
Here on the other one. Yeah, that's where
You're thinking around there?
No,
yeah,
let's talk about the two new fields. Oh, right, Steve? Yes. So around
it sounds like you all could explore it, so maybe we can keep going and that's something you can consider.
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
I just had a question about the 450 seat auditorium.
Yes.
So for 8th grade promotion, for instance, we would not be able to house that unless we set up chairs in the CAF, correct?
That's based on the reimbursement, right?
Yeah, there's really 3 assembly spaces in the building. Cafeteria, which will be equipped for an arrangement of chairs where the tables can be stored away. You'll have the auditorium for 450, and then you'll have the gymnasium, which can hold basically the entire population of students, teachers, faculty, everybody. So it's really those are the 3 spaces that you have in this building.
Right, and so the gym you would be setting up chairs.
So for frame of reference, because we have something that's upcoming at the high school, we're gonna be able to fit, I believe, 1,650 people in the high school main gymnasium. So yes, you would have to set up chairs on the gymnasium floor in an effort to try and get as many people into the school. The other option for a ceremony could be at the high school where that auditorium can hold roughly.
What would ideally be the size? And I don't know if we'll be able to get there, but like if money was in the object or whatever, what would the auditorium size be that would accommodate your fun?
I would say at least 600, 650. I mean, I just think that it's nice that you're building a brand new middle school that we could have ceremonies for 8th grade students, not setting up chairs, which is this kind of seating parents want to be able to see, I mean, it's just, I mean, it definitely isn't a necessity, but since you're building a middle school, it's something I just thought you could definitely push out that to make it a little bit bigger and maybe make it more accommodating for families.
At 600, you could fit 2 classes.
Correct.
Yeah, 2
Grades
grades.
is 300 apiece. Yeah.
Now, to go back to the point that the town manager made, we're capped at 144,000 square feet.
That was one of my questions.
So
that's the reimbursement number?
Yes, if you go larger, you have to consider what space, so there are 2 options. What space is going to shrink, or that whatever the additional sizing would not be reimbursable.
That's just, yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's just, so then this space is very much set, so you could never, say the town grew with additional homes being built, you could never add, like in the future, the 5th grade, or you could never add additional rooms for additional 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, right?
Actually, we did look at that. We don't have a graphic for it, but as part of the study, when 5th grade was eliminated from the building, we asked to take a look at it. So we identified an area down here that we can plug in a 5th grade or elongate, add a couple classrooms onto the bar. But to your point about the auditorium, that would be a difficult space to increase to accommodate additional students.
How much area is that outside space or something like that? Could you add new, like is there an open area there?
This area here?
Yeah, that area there, has that big enough to do something like that, or?
To do a future addition?
No, I'm talking about a assembly or.
Yeah, we currently do it outside.
Do it outside.
We do it outside, but I was just, you're building an air-conditioned building, it would be very nice to be able to have a proper ceremony in our building.
There's no possibility to go up, right? Like, I know the auditorium is at that first floor level. Like, is there a way that you could add seating to the auditorium if we went?
In the future, with a mezzanine? You're talking
No,
about future?
I meant like now.
Well, now it's the 144,000 square foot question.
Yeah.
I think for now we can make it as large or small as we like. It's that number, right? So where does that square footage come from? Be reduced, or does the town take on a larger burden of the cost?
Yeah.
So it's not a geography or a geometric issue. It's really a costing discussion.
Going back to that question though, that was another one that I had is I know we're basing this off of 900 students and that the district is doing a good job with predictions and what we might need over the next 10, 20 years for what we have, but kind of knowing that, like, what happens or in what you all know as far as teams and different things, like what often happens for middle schools when you're designing if you do have a population increase, like what would be some options for the administrators and the teachers in a setup like this with the team structures?
So it's primarily main academic spaces, which you need to grow. Like for the cafeteria, for example, when we eliminated 5th grade from the building, the space actually did not reduce. We just reduced a lunch wave. So it becomes a daily scheduling challenge or challenge, but you have to add an additional wave. The gymnasium is very similar to what we had when we had a whole additional grade. So incrementally adding students, I'm not saying adding a whole another 5th grade, a whole another level, but if additional classrooms needed to be added to this building, the core main assembly spaces can absorb a modest increase. If that answers
If you double,
I mean,
you're not gonna double the size of the school, but.
No, I understand that,
like
but
an extra 100 children or something like that in a year, or spread over.
yeah, so I guess my question would be for the team structure in those classrooms.
Yeah.
That was more of my question. I understand that like the larger spaces could accommodate it.
The rooms are sized for some additional
Okay, that's what I was
seats,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So we're not
Yeah.
designing, such that children are jammed in there. There's a little bit of flexibility. We understand that on a year by year, classes do vary, and the classrooms are designed to allow for
Okay, that's what I was
they're
saying.
850 square feet is a good size classroom.
Yeah, but contractually, you can only put in 25 kids.
Right.
Teams are set up, so teams are set at 100.
All right, that's good to know though that there's some capacity options in those rooms.
Okay. Any other questions?
Reimbursement.
Bingo, your turn.
Should I get up or should I?
What you want to do?
Yes,
You're fine.
please, you have fun. Hi, everyone, good evening. Okay, so as we're working through the reimbursement and the budgeting and the funding of the projects, the recap of the bond and the funding recap. So 167 million total. The state share at the moment is 35%. Plus the incentives, and I know there is a lot of conversations on the incentives and what the district will qualify or will not qualify for. One thing to point out and to keep in mind is that the incentives apply to the middle school and will apply to all the other projects that will be done within the bond if they are submitted all together. So if we do the middle school, the district builds the middle school and all the other smaller projects and whatever roofs and repairs and all the CAP projects. Within this approval that we will be submitting at stage 2, everything will qualify for what the middle school qualifies for. If they are submitted separately, then it's a different story. It will be per case scenario, but if it's submitted together, then all the incentives will be lump summed in. The incentives are, well, we put 5 to 20. So the maximum that the district can qualify for is 20%. The minimum would be 5. So if you look at all the options that are out there, the first 3 that we had listed, so health and safety and educational enhancements, those 2 the district will get automatically just by building a new building. So obviously it will be a better building and will qualify for the health and safety performance, and obviously it provides the educational enhancement to the district and the 2 middle schools, so that also gives you the 5%. The newer and fewer is the district will qualify for by consolidating the 2 schools, demolishing 1 school. Just one of them has to go, so and consolidation will qualify. So 15% is really like a given. Then the next option is what we put in down below. So we did have conversations with Wright, and the replacement is very feasible, but the replacement will require a re-evaluation of one or both of the buildings, so Wickford and or Davisville. Wickford is very close to meeting that reevaluation criteria because it's already an FCI of more than 50, and the building has to be FCI 65 or more, which many districts right now are working on reevaluation. I personally worked with a different district on reevaluating their buildings several years ago. There's 2 options to do it. The district can do it by itself, or we can wait until Wright performs that reevaluation, which they're working on. There is, I believe an RFP is out or may come out soon to get a third-party architecture firm to do a walkthrough of several districts. However, this information and the evaluation will not be available before the referendum, I don't think, regardless of whether the district does it direct or whether the district waits for Wright to do it, right?
When you say the district does it direct, you mean
Higher, not,
than
but
somebody.
yes, correct, so I apologize, so the district
Can
would
you
have.
just explain to folks maybe if they don't know what FCI means?
Okay, so FCI is,
Or just the concept, not the exact
Facility
word.
Condition Index, I
Thank
always
you.
forget what it means. Facility Condition Index, so in 2017, Jacobs was hired to perform a statewide evaluation of all school buildings, and there is a report that is on the Wright's website that basically qualified each building in terms of the percent, like the FCI, the percentage of its index, and the higher the index is, the worse condition the building is. The lower it is, like the better condition the building is. Because it's been several years have passed, it makes sense, and Wright has commented on that it makes sense to revisit certain buildings, right? So some conditions have failed, certain things have failed over time. So if the building has an FCI of, say, 35 or 45, it is unlikely that the building will meet the new 65 plus criteria, unless something drastic has happened in the past several years, which is also possible. But if the building is already in the 50s and the 60s, then it is possible that conditions have deteriorated. So it makes sense to reevaluate and see what's going on in more detail. Is there anything you want to
just to
add?
clarify, do both buildings that are being replaced have to have an FCI of 65 or just one?
Just one.
Just one.
And also to add to this, the building does not have to be demolished. Like in the case of Wickford, we don't know what's going to happen to the building, but it just does not need to be used for the educational purpose for the school. So because it's repurposed, because it has no longer serves as a middle school or a school, and the FCI is higher, that qualifies for the replacement. Now, let's say that the replacement reevaluation was done and neither Wickford or Davisville qualified. We are targeting the energy and water efficiency bonus, which is up to 4%. And this building is already being planned and designed from the start to be above code. So the energy and water efficiency bonus is an incentive to build buildings that are above code and above CHIPS. CHIPS is the sustainability criteria for schools, so it's kind of like the LEED, but it's targeted towards New England schools. So if the FCI does not meet the requirements or criteria, the design will automatically be targeted to meet those 4%. It's an incremental 2 to 4%, but if the building is net zero, by definition will qualify for that. Now the guarantee from RIDE doesn't. They cannot come in and say right now it will qualify, but if the building is built as it is planned, and at stage 2, we did talk to them, they will give us a document that we have to put into stage 2 that sort of describes and answers sort of some questions that will reference the criteria. And RIDE can, at stage 2 submission and after, with the approval, they can issue a document saying that if the building is built as it is intended right now and nothing changed, that the district will qualify for those points. Of course, they cannot guarantee because they have to confirm at the end that the design and the criteria has been met.
Just to clarify, so you're saying that there's potentially 2 different paths to getting to the maximum reimbursement,
Correct.
Either with the FCI or the energy and water efficiency?
Correct.
Okay.
The energy and water will give the district 19%, but the replacement will give the 20%.
20. Okay.
That's not possible to go with both because the cap is at 20%. Any questions?
You're in theory, so if we take down the one school and we put up one school, we're still going to receive that portion.
Correct. So the 2 schools are consolidated. So the middle school purpose is that the newer and fewer applies to the school system. So if you're dealing with middle schools, you had 2 middle school populations. You combine them into one population on one site that qualifies you for newer and fewer. What happens to the other school, it doesn't matter anymore because it does not serve the purpose of the middle school.
But it will still have to be maintained.
Well, has to be a plan for Wickford, but it has nothing to do with the newer and fewer application. So it's a different subject, in terms of what happens to the school, but as long as it's no longer a school that serves, it could be used as, say, swing space for the future, it could be used for another purpose, but it is not, has nothing to do with the newer and fewer.
So it could be used for administrative buildings
Could be used
or
for, correct.
something else. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, correct.
No, that's okay, I just, when you say newer and fewer, there's really no fewer. But I get it.
It is fewer though, because like you're not running two different school buildings. So from a school department perspective, it's fewer because you're not running like electric in both buildings. You're not running like, like it's, in my mind, like I get how it's less operational costs and less, you're only transporting to one building, like it reduces a lot of different things.
The newer and fewer is the name that Wright has, so it's not that, this is how they call it. But it also, it is fewer programs that apply towards, so you had two middle schools, you had two separate sort of operations, two separate programs. Now you have everything in one place for middle schools, not for anything else. And this is what qualifies them for newer and fewer. It's consolidation. The name may be deceiving. Correct. Structures do qualify, of course, because we are taking one down, but the structures have to reference the school type. So it's the middle schools.
The educational part of it.
Correct.
Not the operations part of it.
The operations towards middle school. So if the other building is operating as something else, it's no longer a middle school. That's why this newer and fewer applies.
Are you concerned, Adam? I know I get the name is not as clear as it could be, but are you concerned that we won't qualify for that? Is that what you're saying, or are you?
I'm concerned because you're still going to have two buildings, right? You're taking one down, you put one up. There's no fewer.
Yeah.
But if the way she described it is correct,
yeah,
then it's different from the way I hear it.
Okay, so we can find something
that
explains that. Yeah, no, it's a valid point. I just want to make sure I understood what you were asking.
God forbid we left it, and then they said, well, you still have two buildings.
I have an example. So in Cranston, Rhode Island, we just finished a Garden City Elementary School, and that school we already have applied for reimbursement, and we already received. We're in process of getting them receiving reimbursement, so it was already pre-approved. I don't have like a final reimbursement document, but Wright has it all in the queue. So, for example, the Garden City Elementary School combined two elementary schools into Garden City. The building for one of the elementary schools is now used as a temporary space for the other school that they're building, but it's no longer serves the Garden City population. So the reshuffling that whole sort of structure and putting kids, consolidating children into one school, and then eventually that school will be servicing as something else, qualifies for newer and fewer, but the building itself was not demolished. Only the building that was demolished is the one that we rebuilt. So it's a similar situation, but we can certainly get the supporting documentation, but we have done it, and it has been done throughout the district, so it's not a concern.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the water efficiency. I know we had talked about the gray water system or like a water containment system, and with the green roof kind of in process, I just didn't know if anything had been put in place.
That'll be one of the strategies that we'll present and price out as far as using gray water and things like that. We haven't gotten to that level yet. We haven't even begun to do any calculations of the envelope, but that is coming. And we'll have a presentation about those kind of strategies later.
Any other questions on this item at all? Oh, I'm sorry, it's the next steps.
You got another,
Yes.
another slide. You ready? There you go. About the next steps. Tiny steps.
So this is just a high-level timeline of how the project gets to construction. The target is to break ground in 2025, to complete the project by 2027 at the moment. So if you go to the referendum, so there's 2 public forums. One is September 26th, which is next week, Tuesday. The other one is October 12th. The September 26th forum is at 5:30, if I remember correctly. Yes, it's at 5:30 at the high school. The October 12th is at 5:30, but it is at the town hall. The referendum, of course, is November 7th. Then, assuming it passes, if it passes, then our deadline for submitting to RIDE is February 15th. No later than February 15th, we can submit anytime prior to that. They do take some time to review the submission. Usually there is a little bit of a back and forth within a month, back and forth, maybe they have questions or any follow-up documents. But the final approval by the primary and secondary council, education council, is sometimes in May of 24. And then the district has until end of June to procure all the contracts, including a construction manager in this case, in order to preserve all of the incentives. Because the incentives do run out on June 30th of 24. There have been questions and conversation of whether anything will be extended at the moment, right? And the legislature is fairly confident that there'll be no extension. Of course, we don't know, but at the moment, those incentives stop on June 30th. To maintain incentives, the team has to be in place and construction manager has to be on board based on pre-construction. So the way it's done is the construction manager can be procured based on pre-construction services, and then once the drawings are ready, that can be extended depending on the construction cost. So it has been done within the district, and not district, but within the state. In that fashion.
A quick question about the 35%. I know that was an increase for us as well, like our base. Is that a temporary increase as well, or do we know if the legislator made that a permanent thing for us for a while?
So that gets reevaluated yearly.
Okay.
Based on the district's well. So that is based on the tax that, I'm not sure what exactly the calculation that they're using. So yearly it gets changed. So there is no guarantee that 35% will remain as 35%. Could be a little more, a little less.
But right now, 35 is the lowest in the state. No community has anything lower than 35. Yeah, so.
Those darn house prices.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It used to be 30, but they.
It is an increase. It was 30 when we started having this conversation. 5% makes a big difference.
Oh, yes.
Just something that if we could get added to this, I know early voting starts. Yeah.
October 18th. Okay.
Yes, that would be helpful. And then also, I don't know if this might just be something that we could get out to folks. I know for a special election, we'll have different voting places probably, so just making sure people know where to go. Yeah. Because I know I'll go to the wrong elementary school and then have to go to the other one, and it'll be a thing.
Any questions?
Questions on the timeline?
Just one question that I think I know the answer. So this was extremely comprehensive and helpful. This wouldn't be the presentation for the forum, correct?
No, I think what we're going to try to do is continue to develop the architecture and fill in. We'll probably pull back some of the program stuff maybe a little bit. But our intent is to focus the presentation on the audience, and we'll work together with district leadership to have the right message for that presentation. But Mike and his design team are working like crazy to try to get some three-dimensional images to get a sense of what the building looks like, maybe a sense of materials, fenestration, those kinds of things. So we're gonna work right to the deadline.
And my only concern is, and I talked to Kenny, so I know you're all working on this tirelessly, and I appreciate that. I get just a suggestion, and you do whatever you think is best. So when the superintendent and I spoke, it's 5:30 to 7. And the goal is 5:30 to 6 for recreation, 6 to 6:30 for public safety, 6:30 to 7 for school. Hopefully recreation and public safety won't eat up the whole half hour to provide school with more time. Our goal is to consolidate our presentations, I know it'll be tough to do at this, to about 5 minutes. Only because, I know you couldn't do that, because our goal is to provide an adequate time for Q&A. So the last thing we want is the 7 o'clock time to come and people still have questions. So again, just a suggestion, we're gonna do our best to fast track ours, and I don't think there'll be a lot of questions on the rec center or the public safety complex, so because of the way we established the agenda, 5:30 to 7, every minute we save is yours, or ours. But just a thought, so again, I know you couldn't do 5, but I know we just did 45, and that wouldn't leave any time for Q&A.
Understood.
So do the best you can.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out.
Just wanna let you know.
Yeah, we'll work with the district and the
Sounds good.
program manager to
Sounds good.
figure out the presentation. Yep. Okay, any other questions?
This is all inclusive of, this whole thing, all inclusive of new desk and
Yes.
that's all figured into the, I know not the prices of nowadays must
Correct.
be outrageous.
Correct. It'll be a completely new equipped building.
Okay.
From stem to stern.
I know at the high school we were
Yeah.
putting stuff in from before.
There's nothing that makes a building look worse than trying to reuse old furniture.
Okay, what?
It just looks terrible.
I imagine the furniture you took from the high school probably might be at the building, so you wouldn't want to circle it back around. I don't know if how much, because this is the first time that we've seen this, has the folks at the middle schools gotten to give feedback on this? Like, I'm not sure how it circles around, but making sure that we get the educators' opinions on the designs. I know we have a couple here today, but also making sure that, if not, maybe before the public forum, getting some feedback on this would be really helpful, just to make sure that we don't want to build a building and have people not have it be able to be functional for what they're doing and how they teach, et cetera. So I know you've had opportunities, but just making sure, now that we're at this point, to go back there, that would be great.
If we have questions or comments on the proposed site plan, is this the time to do that now? Or do you wanna wait, or send an email? How do you want me to? Just questions and comments, that's all. I don't know what people are aware of.
Yeah, no, you can certainly bring them up now.
Yeah,
Because the team is here listening.
Yeah, that's the
We
purpose
can
of
go back,
the,
we can go back to the site plan if that works for you.
I'll go right through it real quick.
It's just, we've got the team here.
Keep going.
See it.
Okay.
So your bus route comes, no,
This work?
that's fine.
This work?
Yeah, it's fine. The bus route comes in through McGinn Park. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked at the roadway coming into McGinn Park, but it's tight with just 2 vehicles through there. So, the turn radius going out onto School Street will have to be looked at, and if you're gonna try to get 2 buses through there at once, there's gonna have to be some reworking.
is that redone? Like, it looks like, I know there's current parking there. Is it gonna be, to Adam's point, like wider? Like, it's not the existing road, it's just kind of where it is.
So
correct?
just-
It
So
looks
it actually
like
is
the
existing.
existing circle.
That's existing. So it looks like you're
Yeah.
only using the existing road, existing
Yeah.
circle, and then you're going new. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's just needs to be looked at.
Okay.
I know I have a tough time just getting by another vehicle, coming and going through there. And again, this is just comments, quick comments. So people can
That's what it's,
hear 'em.
yeah.
The restrooms and the concession stand, which is to the right of the field on the top, where it sits currently, all of the electricity for the entire park goes into that building. So if it's relocated or moved, okay, just making sure. I'm seeing them, and the last thing I want is for somebody to come up and say, I didn't know that's where it went.
Civil mentioned that the other day to
Okay.
us. And by the way, we're just starting to get into that level.
Yeah.
There's a whole underlayment of stuff that
I'm
goes on.
sure there's things that I haven't even thought of.
Yeah.
So I get it. Baseball and softball. So right now, we're gonna put a baseball and softball field on this side, and Mr. Pine might be able to help me with this a little bit. Do we want to have baseball on one side and then softball on the other.
Well, the baseball fields depend on direction, and I would have to look at, you shouldn't have like a first baseman standing there like that, you know, keep getting a ball thrown at first base. There's a certain way with a book on baseball that tells you the directions of where they should be, you know, which one way. You don't want back-to-back backstop, but that's good there that way. If those directions were.
I think Adam's question, that's super helpful, but also I think what you were saying, Adam, is like, right now it looks like there's a softball and baseball on this side. Would it make more sense to do baseball on one side and then softball on the other side? Is that what you were saying? Does it
Pretty
matter
much,
as far as
you
like?
You have Little League, right? You have Little League and teams and games. They might not be taking place at the same time as the softball. So I don't know. It would just personal question. That's
And
all.
if they still need that for a little league fields, or.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it will be. I mean, they are used, so we'll have to.
Yeah, that's actually a good point to put the two baseball fields and put the softball field up there separate, but it would kind of, a lot of times Davisville is playing softball at the same time the boys are playing baseball, and it was always, I've umpired about 1,000 games there, and it's always kind of like the fun, you know, of both teams playing, and especially if they're playing Wickford or something like that. It's always
That's not a good look.
We'll be playing together.
Yes.
So
The coaches love each other.
So a point to consider is that right now you have the Little League, softball, and baseball. You have 3 fields. If you moved the Little League to where we're showing softball, then you would have to redesign the Little League field to serve as a softball field.
Yeah.
Additionally to your point, the orientation does matter, especially with baseball, and it's a matter of overhand versus underhand pitching, and where the elevation of where the ball is coming from. So softball, it's okay if it's facing the opposite direction because the ball is typically coming from a lower angle. Baseball, you definitely want to try to get it in a northeast configuration. We've tried playing around with the orientations on those 2 fields quite a bit, and because of the setbacks and property lines and all that, we're very limited in how much wiggle room we have. But it's something we could look at, but I think that this may be the best configuration.
And you would never have baseball because you only have one baseball field. So we're relocating one baseball field, which is the largest field in the image. There's no way we could fit 2 of those. So unless I misunderstood.
No, he's saying on a smaller Little League field. Little League field's only 200.
I think to your point though, it's kind of fun when they're both playing, like,
Yeah, but
it seems fine.
the Little League field won't be used by the students. The softball field will be used by the students.
But what the town is doing right now with a lot of the baseball fields, they're putting up telephone poles behind the backstops with huge netting, and it makes a heck of a big difference as far as like if you get people living nearby, you're not getting foul balls going into someone's yard.
Yep.
And that would be a good start, but you gotta build it that way with the huge backstop, net backstop behind it. It does save a lot of.
I agree. I'd be concerned with the message we're sending if we're putting a Little League baseball field for younger boys mostly next to a baseball field and then putting the girls softball field off on its own, especially because our girls students at the middle school would be using the softball field. I'd be concerned about that.
Good point. Yeah, that is.
Is that?
Yeah, and Little League can just use that other field by themselves.
It was just a comment.
Yep, it's a good one.
Baseball.
Alright, moving on. Adam's fine.
Softball
No,
dad.
it's a good thought, but I think like we talked it through, great talk.
You just want to get near the concession stand. That's what you want.
Adam just wants more over at the concession stand.
There is
That's
an
what I heard.
additional
You want to be
concession.
near the concession stand, you got a hot dog.
And actually, I think that's one of the points that may have been missed.
There is 2 concessions.
There is a second concession stand.
Oh, over the
So
other.
if you look down the right field baseball line and
Oh,
left
okay,
field
there's another,
softball line, there's an additional one, so there's now 2 concessions.
Okay.
Totally took a left-hand turn. Really, I was just grouping baseball and softball.
Just as an additional point of reference, just to let you know, and I think you know, but I just want you to digest this in case it has more questions. This will be under the care and custody of the town.
Right.
Because of that
So
federal easement. So we will be maintaining those fields. I don't know if that changes anything.
No, I mean
Oh, we'll be working with school
softball
department.
goes through recreation as well. It's
Yeah.
not just,
Exactly.
and baseball goes through recreation as well. because the Little League does use the baseball field.
Yeah,
And
that's my point.
So it's not just school.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly, that's why I mentioned that.
But that's not where I was going, I was just grouping like items.
Gotcha.
The elephant in the room. Has anybody started on the title transfer, we would say, or whatever it is? We have a federal piece over this whole thing.
So I can tell you that we had a meeting on that today, and the planning director and legal counsel may be reaching out to you in the next 24 to 48 hours, because we have to put together an application, and there's 4 questions that we can't answer without your assistance.
Sure.
And it may require the school department to do a title search on the property, but we can talk about that. So yes, the ball is rolling, but we've, as with any kind of governmental application, we've hit our first of many roadblocks. So it can get kind of frustrating.
Just didn't want to.
No, thank you. It's just good for the public to hear that. But we're fast tracking it, but you know, they call it governmental red tape for a reason, and we just hit roadblock number 1. So I know that the members, so would you like to say, because again, you're part of the school facility, so please, if you can go to the microphone now. If you can go to the microphone, sure.
It really is just about this field.
Yep.
So the question about soccer field and potential, even if it's just a practice-sized track, that existing multi-use field is going to remain, correct?
Yes.
So that's a logical site for a soccer, because soccer is very important, on site. And so that field looks like it's
used
definitely
now.
big enough.
It's used now for soccer.
Right, so that's going to continue.
Yes,
though.
Correct.
All right, so that kind of solves the soccer
Yeah,
practice.
but it'd be nice to have a track around
Put
it.
a track around it, right?
Noted.
Yeah, just put a track.
Don't worry, we don't need to go back to track, it's noted.
But I think that'd be perfect.
Are there other sports at the middle school, outside middle school students, like just thinking ahead, or things that we don't offer that we would want to if we had the fields?
So I can tell you that field right there is used by a local football organization virtually every day and Saturday from August 1st till Thanksgiving.
Jaguars.
Yes.
Jaguars, yeah.
And the cheerleaders use our gym or
Yes.
our cafeteria.
Yes.
They might add lacrosse in
So
the spring.
lacrosse and field
Yeah.
hockey are potential sports that other middle schools engage in that we do not at this point in time. But that field, again, you're sharing it amongst a lot of.
And if it's used as a practice field, it would be nice to have lights. I know that's probably an expense, but while you're thinking about it, then, the baseball fields maybe not as much.
It has lights.
There is lights.
It has lights.
What?
There's lights.
Well, there's lights here now, yeah,
Yes.
but I don't know if you're gonna move them around when you're, but to have the light
No,
bulbs.
because putting in all new lights, so I hope not, so.
No, I don't supposed to remain, I saw them on the plan.
Okay, good.
Okay, I do, I figure lights are good.
Any consideration with the parking lots? Like they're very close together, does it make sense to combine or not combine or keep separate, especially with the bus route that's gonna be potentially coming through there at some point?
Is there still a big hill?
Yeah, there is an elevation change between the two. It's a little bit hard to tell on here. It looks a lot closer than it may be because we don't have a survey yet and we're using aerial. But there is a several foot difference between the two, so connecting them may be tricky. But as we progress through it, we'll see if there are any efficiencies we can bring in.
And I'm assuming that the amount of parking spaces will accommodate the amount of staff that would be in the building with like the increased.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
Yes, we have 130, which is what we were told, and then we have additional 80 spaces.
Additional how many?
I believe there are somewhere between 6 and 8 ADA spaces.
And again, just for events, probably no parking.
Do we know how many spots are in the lower lot? I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not a lot.
Begin?
Yes.
Yeah, we do know. Steve, you know how many?
Yeah, it's about 65 parking spots at Begin.
Which, if you go by there anytime, and they're usually between the Jaguars and basketball. Yeah, it is. It's used, yes.
How many are we losing spots then, based on the existing?
I think so.
We are?
Because right now, we have a very large area to the left or to the right, if you're looking at the building to the right, and then we utilize McGinn, but that whole part to the right where the baseball field is really open parking. You know, so when we have events, we fill that, we fill all the front, we fill McGinn, and we still end up on the street.
Just something.
And it's not every day. It's about 3 to 4 times a year.
Yeah, but I think one of our purposes of building this building though is to utilize the auditorium for things in the evenings for the community and the town. And so I think thinking about event parking and what that looks like is important. We might not be able to do it, but I think you bring up a really good point to just consider what would happen if you are going to fill that 400 seat auditorium and there's going to be more than 130 cars. I think that's a really good point.
You also have the advantages of the loops.
Yep.
You know, it always becomes temporary parking.
Yeah, people are creative on Friday nights for sure.
Yes.
It's like
Are you saying like?
not me. I park in legal
Yeah,
spots.
the circles out front of the building.
Oh, yeah.
Right, but you
Yeah.
can't park there because of fire. Just saying.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Directly in front of the loop, no, but there's a long pathway and sometimes we'll.
Just something
Yeah.
that if you could consider it, I think that's a really good point.
What we'll do is we'll count the existing parking compared to what we have now to make sure that we're not actually cutting any spaces.
And it sounds like we're at a deficit, even with what we currently have, with 1/2 of the population.
That's a good point, not to elaborate, but that's a good point. So even if we are not, let's say you're not really losing any parking spaces, let's say it's a wash.
It's still
You're doubling the student population.
and not that middle schoolers drive, but like
Yeah.
when
Right.
thinking about
Like
what
I just
we
said,
might
like
use
it's
it for.
3 to 4 times a year. It's just 3 to 4 times a year.
But it might be more if we're able to do like theater performances and we're able to do more concert, you know, like just something to think about, or if we had 2 different things happening at once, if you had something in the gym and something in the auditorium, just good to plan and think it through.
Maybe it could be the loop, and it's a fire loop behind the building, but if it was wide enough, then it could be fire plus additional parking when needed, so it wasn't open all the time for parking, but.
The landscape architects are
Whatever they say.
brainstorming, but it's good when you make them.
I'm assuming septic system under the ball field?
That's the idea. Yeah, we've looked at, we're looking right now at the soil sweeping we have on site. We have some estimate data from the previous septic design, which was completed in 2005. So it was a renovation of those leaching areas. So we're looking at how to get to the flows that we need. Where to put those. So hoping to be underneath the ball field. I think that'll be ideal. But we have a few steps to go before we can confirm that.
I just had one more thing about the waiting out front, like the bus loop out front, just making sure, as you know, students are unloading or exiting at the end of the day, that it's 900 students, so making sure there's enough space for them outside. And then also I know there's the one main entrance for safety, but I also know when you're moving that many students, making sure that sometimes there's a benefit to sending different groups in different doors, so just making sure there's another way into the building.
Yeah, there will be.
Yeah.
You know, typically that one entrance is for
Once it shuts
visitors,
down.
right? So that everybody's controlled, but during the arrival and dismissal, there's lots of ways to get out.
Yeah, so if we could map that and maybe like note what that would look like, and then make sure to run it by the educators. I think that is such an important part, especially because this school, although we have this scope at the high school, it's very different because the students drive themselves, they stay after. It's different than the middle school age. So that's, I think, really important.
Well, one of the things I've red dots on a certain area was to keep people from going over there. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to have doors that open both ways. You just can't say you can't come here. I think you need to have doors that open both sides. So like in case someone gets stuck on the other side, they couldn't get out of the building. I know it's like that at the high school. Like you have to have, so that's just something, it wouldn't come in coming in, but you know,
Yeah, we can never track.
you
everybody.
can never keep them,
Yeah.
that was always our thought, is to keep one side community,
Right.
one side academic, and with a big spine down the middle, but it never worked, because you could never stop people from walking the entire building if they wanted to.
At what point, will these plans go in front of, like, public safety, the police, the fire, to get their feedback on, what you all are designing? When does that usually happen in the process?
Yeah, we could do it early.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Might be good to do it, so
Yeah.
you can get some, endorsement from their side and their opinion. If anything has to change, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I think that would.
And by the way, we never stop talking to them.
Oh, yeah, no, I just
So
think
it's
it's helpful in the design, because if they say, oh, this would be difficult because we have this size truck, it's maybe something that you don't know that's town specific, you'll be able to work that in earlier than trying to play catch up at the end.
Right. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave some really good feedback about the high school that we were able to look at, and so, that was like 20 years later, but like, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Something that we haven't discussed yet, but I know will come up at the public forums because it comes up every time I talk to folks, is about the transportation study and about how long it's going to take students to get to the building and like when they'll get home at the end of the day. Do we have a progress update on that, or is that a different part of the story?
So there's a transportation study that's happening next week or the week after.
They're going to be collecting data on September 27th, and they'll be letting us know their conclusions. And then I know Kenny's been reaching out to the bus logistics person in North Kingstown.
Great. Perfect. So September 27th, how long does it usually take for those to?
So we'll have to get a response from him on how long that will take to take that information in. The bus information, I know Kenny has a lot of that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll go on to the next item, if that's okay. Vision for, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for adjusting the date.
Very,
We really appreciate it.
very thorough, thank you. Vision for district facilities, I'll turn it over to our assistant superintendent.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, they can go, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That open house, that new school in Garden City is September 30th. I'm going for that, my sister.
All right.
Works there.
Oh,
They get
nice.
the
So-
5 fingers, the 12 fingers.
Just to,
Five grades.
to kind of move this along, so what we wanted to do in addition to presenting, having the presentation we had about the building, the new middle school building, and then obviously Mike's capital improvement piece, is also just an overall district vision on school facilities. So we want to talk a little bit, kind of widen the scope a little bit more, and obviously we know that obviously the middle school piece is going to be the center point of this, but we want to talk a little bit about more broadly what we see district-wide as our vision for school facilities. So some of this might sound a little bit repetitive, but there's going to be also more as well. So anyway, you have the vision here. Again, high quality, rigorous, innovative education to our students in healthy, secure, safe facilities that positively impact and support 21st century teaching and learning. So we've been through this. We've kind of talked about it all, throughout. This is just a little profile of our districts. Where we are in terms of total district enrollment, 3,900 students, pre-K through 12. Includes high school students from Jamestown. Currently operating 9 school buildings, including 4 elementaries that are K to 5. One that is pre-K to 5. 2 middle schools, 6 through 8, and our high school, which includes transition service and a one clinical day program K to 12. And then our district administration is currently spread out over 3 buildings, 2 of which are owned by the school department, and 1 office building which is leased through Quonset Development. Okay. So this gives us a little visual of our current and projected enrollment. The areas that are highlighted are either, so let me start by saying the table to the left there is the current enrollment with the school, the current enrollment, and the capacity. And you can see that there are 3 schools highlighted now that are either at capacity or over capacity, or very, very close to capacity. Okay? As you can see, Fishing Cove, Hamilton, and Forest Park fit that description as far as the number of students per school. And then the projected enrollment, which is to the right, again shows how these would project out as a pre-K through 5 allocation. Now we know that pre-K is not a viable program in most of our elementary schools because of space. But we wanted to do that just to illustrate the number of students at each age level that we project out, and that's centering on the 2026 enrollment projections, right there. Okay, so the point here is that we are going to, regardless of the outcome of this bond, have to look very closely at redistricting and look very closely at making sure that we are allocating students to school buildings that are going to be, able to accommodate the capacity. All right, so that's something that's going to be a point in the near future. Okay, so again, Dr. Duva mentioned this: aspire to provide learning environments for our students that are engaging, promote sustainability initiatives and opportunities to learn through their surroundings, become global change agents. Again, that's the business of inspiring that we are very, very invested in with our students. So these are some of the phases of development that we're looking at, again, comprehensively. So looking first, we discussed at great length tonight, consolidated middle school grades 6 to 8 to replace Wickford and DMS. Also, however, looking at renovations of elementary schools based on the recent facility assessment. So we talked a lot about that. Mike shared the details in his presentation. Talk about the consolidation of administrative offices, which we'll get to in more detail shortly, but looking at obviously making that space more efficient. Expanding the continuum of special education programs and resources. That would include a variety of our special ed continuum to service students of various needs, and also our pre-K program, which we look to continue to grow and expand as well. And then also renovating the D building for CTE program is something that we see as a very exciting and very important need to expand offerings to our high school students. We are thrilled right now to be starting a new machinist program that we are doing in partnership with Electric Boat, which is a wonderful opportunity for our students. We have a nice cohort of kids in year 1 right now. We're partnering with both Electric Boat and CCRI on that, and we hope to continue to grow that program and expand it so that we are putting kids, we are putting them in front of tangible opportunities to pursue not only career interests but also employment interests down the line. Okay. Anything? Okay.
That's wonderful.
Yes, yeah, we're excited. We're really excited. We got a great start to that. Anyway, also, one consolidated middle school will provide a state-of-the-art facility with a healthy and high-performance learning environment. Again, we talked about this at length, but having one consolidated middle school gives us a lot of advantages in many, many ways, obviously with a brand new building and state-of-the-art facilities, access, and modern space. We're also looking at other future school bond and capital improvements for our elementary schools. Obviously, we talked about the roofs and the security upgrades at these facilities, and also our library STEM media centers. So these are buildings that, with the needs we have right now, definitely have to have their share of attention with what we're looking at. So that's another piece to this. And just to revisit this, the consolidation of administrative offices. So again, right now we have offices in the D building at Fairway Drive, which we've talked about being used for CTE programming and expanding those programs for kids. Also restructuring our programs at Davisville Academy to look at how we can make sure that we are, again, meeting the needs of our students in that area. And also looking at potentially moving administration from our QDC place where we are right now to possibly the Davisville Academy building. That would result in some significant savings when you look at what the district is paying right now to lease this space. Having that space in one of our own buildings would be a significant benefit. And so that operational cost, we're looking at approximately $128,000 in funds that can be appropriated into the maintenance of facilities and educational programs if administrative offices are consolidated. So there's a great benefit to that, looking at getting all of our district administrators in one location in a place that is owned and operated by the school department as opposed to leased. So that kind of gives you paints you a little picture of kind of where we're going from a district-wide comprehensive view. That's kind of our vision. That's what we are looking to kind of bring everything under this umbrella of the middle school project, and also exercise some things that are financially more efficient, but also exciting in the world of education for our kids. So that's where we are.
Yeah, will some of this be, because I think it's great news, will some of this be part of the forum presentation, do you know? Or?
Yeah.
And I know you can only put so much, exactly. I know.
Yeah, the time.
You got about, if you have 5 minutes, to make sure we can fit in.
The time is something we'll have to look at for sure.
And they are recorded, so everything that we saw today, will be posted on the school department's website, so people can watch the full comprehensive presentation that they did today, and then some of these things. So we'll make sure.
I just think they're assets towards voting yes on question 1. So I just think it is a good. That's great.
I think we'll consolidate certain things for the two presentations and make them into one.
Just in conversation, just with the Davisville Academy, I think it's great to consider that for administrative offices, and we've spoken with Kendra and Rachel about their vision of maybe housing some of the programs within the school buildings, and I think that conversation should be sort of developed as we're looking at the plans for the middle school. They don't really see that component in those plans, and I think that's where we're going, and would like to see more of where we could put that now before we.
No, I agree. Just to clarify, you're talking about the programs that currently exist at Davisville?
Yes,
like some of them, instead of having them over at Davisville Academy, bringing them into our schools, and so those spaces would definitely have to be.
Absolutely, and we've been actively meeting on that.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Santa's very at the point of that. And,
but when you look at the plans that we looked at today,
making sure the architects get that message, I think, is what.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So does adding walls at the schools, does that make more space or less space? Yeah, the 3 Freaking Cove, Stony Lane, and Quinessa. You want to take the open spaces and make the classrooms, right?
Yes.
Does that take away more space or less space? I'm thinking of students. Like in a big open classroom, if you put make this room three classrooms, would you get more students?
I think that it potentially takes away flexibility, because right now that's the way it is more flexible space. I would say though personally that I think it adds a lot of benefits in terms of having spaces that are
controlled.
Controlled and in their own individual learning area, and it limits us to in terms of specialized programs, because specialized programs often have to be, have more of a private space, and the buildings don't really offer that right now.
Kind of like the high school was, the A building at the high school.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was confusing.
You could hear Mr. Sullivan all the way on the other side. I think too, with those things, even if we lost a little bit of square footage by doing that, the learning benefits to students would be huge, especially for students that, and I don't know if you've ever, I learned in those buildings, it is extremely distracting, extremely loud, and I can imagine exhausting for the teachers having to compete with the noise and different things. So even if you lost a little bit, you'd still probably be able to accommodate the students and then be able to, deliver education in a better way.
And I'll add this, when we're looking at our special education continuum, which is something we're really looking closely at right now, the fact is that buildings that have an open space really limit us. They really limit us in terms of how we can best provide for the individual needs of student population. So that's a concern. So it would be a benefit in a lot of ways.
Any other questions? The next agenda item, the final agenda item, is our next meeting day. So I was talking to the superintendent before I walked in, and we have this meeting scheduled for September 26th, which is 9 days from today, and then again on October 11th. Those dates did fit with everyone's schedule. What we were offering, provided that it worked, is a slight restructuring, and rather than have October 26th, which is 9 days from now, and September 26th, which is 9 days from now, and October 11th, combine the two and have a meeting on Wednesday, October 4th.
I think it was the 27th.
Yeah, the 26th is the public forum.
Oh, 27th, that's right, thank you. So rather than the 27th and the 11th, we're looking at Wednesday, October 4th. Does anybody have a conflict with that? I know Perkins isn't here regretfully, but hopefully. So what I would do
The
then.
only, just a comment, it's not a, you can keep it, we just have a school committee meeting the day before that, and so, just as far as like if any decisions need to be made or anything that needs to come from the building subcommittee needs to be voted on at the school committee level, you'll have to wait 2 weeks until the meeting that would be on the 17th.
Okay.
We could call a special meeting if need be, et cetera, but just to be aware that we're the day before that.
I think that would work, but I appreciate that.
Mhm.
So what else?
October 4th,
Yes.
there's an open house at Davisville Academy and a CLAC meeting.
Okay.
You can't schedule again. We're trying really hard not to schedule.
There's open houses.
No, well, open houses, but also the other subcommittees that we have,
Okay.
trying not to overlap it. So especially Pam, but also lots of other great community members like to go to it. And so maybe if we could relook at that date, that would be.
I didn't know if there were
What
any
about the
membership.
second?
The second is Monday?
Mhm.
I'd have to check if I have a council meeting. No.
You
policy
don't,
saw that.
because
No,
you
you don't,
Policy saw that.
there's no con,
could do it after that.
town council is October 30th.
Yeah, CLAC's at 6:45, so unless we went earlier.
Go earlier.
So on the October 4th, there's already a meeting at 6:45, so if we went earlier, we'd have like 5.
Do a 5. Want to try it? It's up to you. Again, it's.
I see that. I think that's
There's something that Kenny and I were talking about. We thought it would work. So. Right. You want to try 5 o'clock? And then what I would do is if we could just on October 4th, if we can confirm that with Perkins to make sure it works for them. If not, we'll just stick with the 27th.
Okay.
So you think we're good with 5?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's try that then. And then, so if you can confirm that with Perkins, let Kenny know. If that's a go, then we can send out an email letting everybody know we're good for the 4th, and we'll cancel the 26th and the 27th and the 11th.
I'll find out tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Motion to adjourn? Second? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thanks.
That's You just gotta shut off the recording.